Hey, welcome to SAS Talk 101. It's your girl BB here, and you already know, you're thinking it, but I'm saying it out loud. On this platform, we don't discriminate against race, sex, or gender. We're here to speak with an open mind, to learn from each other's past experiences and life experiences. So let's get started. On this episode, we're talking about good kids, bad kids. So what makes a kid a good kid? What makes a kid a bad kid? Well, let's start from parenting. For many of you that are parents, you pretty much understand where I'm coming from. But you may not have my back here. I've had some experiences with children myself, so I know what I'm talking about. You know, in this world that we live in, everyone has an opinion, including me. But the opinions that I'm talking about here is, many times we hear on television or we hear on the news or on social media that this parent just basically went off the chain on their kid. Like they just did the ultimate. And many people start commenting, how could you? Why would you? And all of this stuff. But I like to have a little empathy for the parents that are parenting a certain age group. When you have a toddler, you have a certain level of patience and a little bit of an expectation. And you can kind of put them away for a little bit and let them kind of after you've done fed them and cleaned them, do everything you can. And they're just wailing. There's certain things you're just trying to wean them off. We get that. But when they're teenagers and when they talk back and when they do things that defile the very rules that you have and they drive you up the walls, man, talk about thinking some crazy thoughts that you are resisting or restraining yourself from just basically lunging at your kid. You really legitimately want to throw them up in the air and just watch them land. Maybe they'll crack their head and some senses will, the sense will kind of get into them. But until you are a parent of a teenager, you really can't really talk, because a teenager can take you to a place you never ever thought you could go as a parent, because as a pre-parent, you did not think of these crazy years that they would come. You heard about them, but you didn't have any idea what you were going to deal with. So I say this from a past experience from an acquaintance of mine. When her daughter was a teenager, a clause here, she comes from a Christian family, a good neighborhood, a great community, great school, well-to-do. And, this woman and her husband, they don't do drugs or drink, none of that. And then they have a child. And in her teenage years, it was the most trying time of their life until this child was a young adult. These things kept happening. The drugs got heavier. The drinking got heavier. Then she got into abusive relationships and was doing criminal activities to supply for the drugs and everything, right? Because I think sometimes we just assume, or we put a stamp that because they come from a great neighborhood, a great parent, that they're immune to life things that can happen. When your kids are toddlers, you can direct their path. You can tell them where to go and when bedtime is. But when they're teenagers, there's a little bit of that control you really used to have that's a lot out of your control. They're influenced by other young adults. They're influenced by music. They're influenced by social media and a lot of access to it. Because why? As parents right now in this day and age, we're giving them cell phones that are walking computers and walking outlets to a doorway of places we can't control and people we can't control. they get to speak to. And even if they didn't have a phone that we didn't provide, guess what? They're going to school and their friends have a phone and their friends are giving them access to, those social media outlets. And then there's, these places that maybe in our mind, we weren't intentional. Many times you think about having children, and even as young women, when you were thinking about getting married and you're playing with your dollies, there was never this intentional mindset that I was going to give my child the best morals, or I was going to install in them how to stand up to peer pressure. Like, I think a lot of times as parents, and I'm not knocking parents, I'm just saying the reality is many parents aren't thinking about what moral compass they're going to install in their children. So when the path that they have to take to do right or wrong, it's easier for them to make better choices. And I look at some young adults today, many of them lack common sense because a lot of thinking is done for them and a lot of focus is directed to a lot of book smarts and their social atmospheres and the sports they play, but we don't really focus on being good citizens, being people that are respectful, people with integrity. Are we being intentional, parents, when it comes to raising our children? At times I'll overhear parents talking about little Johnny, he has the best grades, and that's all the focus on is impressing each other with how great the kid is. But we're missing out on some important functions that our kids need to have installed in them. And we have this expectation that when they are teenagers, they're just going to automatically become this great person, when we never even taught them at their young portion of their age these great moral and fibers that they need to really have instilled, because we're the ones that's supposed to be instilling that, behavior in them. I see young children throw temper tantrums. Not that kids don't throw temper tantrums, but there's parents out there that I know will give you one look and that kid will be like, hold on, I must have just lost my mind for acting up. That look. And I think a lot of parents are afraid of the look, are afraid to, spoil the rod instead of spoiling the child. They're afraid to put that kid in check. Like, hey, right now, in check. And we want to soften it up with all of this soft stuff. Sometimes you need to snatch that kid up. And when I say snatch that kid up, I'm not saying it always has to be this physical snatch up. I'm saying get down on their level and let them know you mean business and this type of behavior is not okay. Because when we let our kids throw these temper tantrums and we give in, guess what? We have young adults that when the police officers are dealing with them, they've been so used to throwing temper tantrums. They've been so used to getting slick out their mouth. Guess what they're doing to authority? They're testing authority. And guess what? These police officers are not you, sir and ma'am. They're not you. They're not going to have patience with little one. They're going to snatch that kid up. They're going to body slam him to the ground, him or her, and they're going to arrest them. And then they're going to call you to come and see where your child is. Plain and simple. And I'm not saying that all of this bulletproof things, but it helps to eliminate a lot of it, because we're expecting our youth to just pop up out of the jack in the box with these behaviors and the way to think when we as parents are not installing them. We're just like, well, you should know better. Should know better what? When you never showed your kid better. You just thought because they're supposed to just be watching you do better that they get it. That's not always the case. They're not with you 24/7. Parents, I am challenging, need to be intentional about raising their kids. It's more than academics. Academics are great, but you know what? There's a lot of smart people walking around here doing some dumb stuff. There's a lot of intelligent people that graduated from great schools that are out here doing some dumb stuff. And their mindset is that they don't have to work hard. They don't have to, do these things with integrity because, you know what? All their life, they've been taught they don't have to do that. All their life, they've been taught that's not the expectation. So they become horrible bosses. They become horrible friends. They become horrible spouses. They become a lot of horrible things. And people don't really want to be around people like that. So I say that all in the sense of, are we being intentional when we're thinking about bringing children into the world? We know things happen, but as parents, I feel like there is a lack of the intentional portion of making sure our children have these moral statures that they hold themselves up to, and you hold them up to because you were very intentional about teaching. That's the magic word here, teaching them these things. And when we teach them, that's what we hold them up to. It's crazy because I was watching this show and this young man, great kid. I mean, if there was anything that the community and the parents and his siblings had to say about this child is how great of a kid he was. But here was the gateway that we are as parents can't control. And I'm not saying it's the doomsday of everything, but it happens out here. This kid started gaming with other young people in his age group, other young men in his age group, gaming with them online. It's a great way to meet other people, right? Outside of your inner community, but you're meeting people forming a different community. Young man is very smart and respectful. His parents raised him very well. And these are all the things that they had to say about this young man. But guess what? There was this other person on there. There was this fisher that was fishing for who he could kill, steal, and destroy. And the enemy is always roaring like a lion, looking for whom he can devour. And those of you that are people of faith understand that verse that Jesus Christ spoke about. The enemy is always looking for who he can steal, kill, and destroy. And this young man was on there, and little by little, this young man manipulated this other young man to isolated him from the people on that community, the other young people on that community. I started telling him lies about his own parents, and just really basically he was grooming this young man to basically get this young man away from his parents. And because so much of the behavior was out of the parents' control, and yes, the mother tried to do everything she could at the end to get the police involved, and the police weren't really taking it very serious at the time. But it was to the point that even though the mother took away her son's cell phone, can you believe that other young man bought a phone and somehow, in some way, got it in the hands of this other young man? Now, mind you, they live miles and miles and miles, more than 2 to 3 miles away from each other. But guess what? He got him a cell phone, and he was able to communicate with him secretly till one day he got this kid to convince the mother to spend the night at some other friend's house. And the parents felt like, well, we know them, so he's going to spend the night there. And they agreed. And Lord and behold, when the kid got on the train, he did not go to the house of the friend that both parents had agreed. He went to the house of the friend that was grooming him. And it is so sad to learn certain lessons the way we learn them good or bad, we have to still learn from them. But it was just so sad to learn this lesson. The child went to this friend's house, and that young man had evil intentions. He raped this young man. He tortured this young man. This young man, can you imagine when his parent at one time was saying how bad this person was, the evil that was in this person? This kid was so far gone mentally to this person that he was looking up to, saw the parents more as an enemy. Can you imagine his last hours screaming for his mother and father and his siblings, thinking to himself, I will never see them anymore. Thinking to himself, my parents were right. And where at such a place to be so right and to be wrong all at the same time. And there's a lot of things we can't prevent, but there's a lot of things we have a lot of control over, that we need to be intentional as parents when it comes to our young, precious children. Being intentional with the way what we allow them to have exposure to, what we allow them to think and do, because a lot of things come from how we're raising them. Because we can have really good kids, but because we lack to put some great moral compass around them, and we lack to put some boundaries down, we freely give them out to the wolves to devour, because they're going to be influenced, right? Because, teenagers think parents were never a kid. Teenagers think parents are what do they know? They know it all. Especially in middle school, they can't even pay a bill. They can't even cook, for Pete's sake, without a microwave. Okay. But they know it all. They have it all figured out. But at the end of the day, and this doesn't bulletproof everything, but I think a lot as parents, we give so much that we fail to help them understand that this is our money, which is parents' money, not your money. You're just our responsibility because we have you, and we're going to make sure you're fed and you're clothed and you have shelter. Anything outside of that is gravy on your behavior. And I think a lot of times as parents, we give, and it becomes this expectation that our children feel like, even as adults, we need to be giving. And we don't put them at a place that we say, hey, you're going to have to provide for yourself at a certain place. So you know what? You better make sure you got this together, because at this place in your life, I can't take care of you. I have to still take care of me. And young adults have to be responsible for themselves. But there's a lot of young people that have this expectation that, well, my parents should be helping me. Excuse me? There's a lot of parents that, especially parents that come from, foreign backgrounds, and they're into a new land, they're into a new country or a new state, and they have to basically work from nothing, and to make something of their life to be able to provide for you. And you have this expectation that, yeah, my parents should be helping me pay bills. Excuse me, you are an adult. They didn't have their parents helping them pay bills. That's a blessing when your parents can help you, not support you, help you. There's a certain point that your parent does not become your support. That's all you do is count on your parents to take care of you while you do all kinds of crazy things in life and have this expectation that they just need to be, your new welfare system. That's just not, they are not here to take care of all of your well-being. You should be looking at how are they going to survive, because now they're much older, and making sure they have a better quality of life. as they're getting older. And I find like there's this generation that have this expectation that their parents worked hard to make sure they are taken care of continuously. Wrong. Newsflash. Wrong. So it's just crazy because good kids, bad kids. And, even if you're brought up in a very good community and you never had to deal with trouble, it doesn't make you trouble proof to the things that are out there that can cause some, huge damage. Even a child that is brought up in a very tough environment or a tough community, that parent is still responsible for making sure that they put good moral fibers together so that child can have a fighting chance to not be, a statistic, in their own environment, So I definitely wanted to bring this up because I'm seeing a lot of backlash to a lot of parents that, they put their kids in check. Their young adult kids or their much older kids are having this expectation that, because they're rich, their parents should be taking care of them. Because they're rich, their parents should be bailing them out. Guess what? Your parent didn't tell you to go do something so stupid and get caught, and now they have to pay for your errors and your ways. No, not cool. And people are saying, well, you have money and you should do something. No, they don't. What are you telling your kid? You can continue the bad behavior and I will continue to bail you out. That's not cool. So it's just like I'm seeing a lot of that from social media. And I just think it's the most interesting thing because this is the, generation we live in. It's, pacifier, but we don't put ourselves in that person's shoes and say, you know what, that person's tired of being that person's scapegoat. That person's tired of having sleepless nights because they're afraid that they're going to get the call that this kid of theirs or this adult child of theirs is in a ditch somewhere or is locked up for doing something so stupid. You don't understand those parents, and we as people want to comment on the pages or comment and say, well, they're wrong for being a parent that says, homie, you are cut off. And I don't care what you have to do because this one, you're going to have to live the consequences. Whatever happened to consequences? Whatever happened to holding up consequences? So this is the end of the episode. I hope you truly enjoyed it. I look forward to getting your feedback as parents and non-parents. What are some of your intentional goals when it comes to thinking about having children? And if you have children now, what are some of the things you've done that you don't regret ever putting into place to make sure your children are great citizens and people of integrity that can hold their heads up high? What are some of the things you've done? And even if you've done some things that you're not so proud of, please leave me some feedback. And I look forward to if you leave a recorded feedback right on the Anchor platform after listening to the show. I will put it into the replay because I can't wait to share your feedback. Or you can email me at sasstalk101 at gmail.com with your feedback. Tell me where you're listening from because I love to be able to share that with my listeners on the follow-up show. As always, stay awesome and be open-minded to those around you. This is your girl, BB, over and out.